Hey everyone, Dr. Sonya here, and I'm going to be talking to you about my favorite topic, which is the topic of hormones. So today I'm going to keep it really simple and just go over our monthly cycle, the hormones that are in that cycle and what they dictate, and what things will affect those hormones, which will then in turn affect our lives, our body, our health, and just how we respond to life itself. So when we look at our hormones, now for those of you that don't have a cycle anymore, maybe you're moving through perimenopause and menopause, this video is also important for you because it's really important to understand where you've been, to understand where you are today and where you're going. When you have an understanding of your hormonal story from before, it really helps support you move through these transitions a lot more smoothly because you can understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. So when we look at our monthly cycle, now this is a typical 28-day cycle. Not everybody's going to have that. Yours may vary from 26 all the way up to 35 days. So this is just looking at a typical cycle of day 1 being the first day that you bleed. Around day 14 is when there's ovulation and we're releasing an egg. And day 28, the bleeding starts again afterwards. So when we look at the first 2 weeks, now typically in these 2 weeks, we're going to feel a little bit different. We may have a little bit more energy. We want to do our to-do list, that we're more outbound with our energy. Our appetite might be a little bit low because estrogen, which is one of the main hormones that are dictating these first 2 weeks, is high, and that acts as a natural appetite suppressant. So this estrogen is good for many things. It's good for our mucous membranes, it's good for our skin, it's good for our bones. It helps to create flexibility in our cardiovascular systems for our arteries. So it's really, really supportive and very, very necessary. So it has this ability to rise and then it will fall because it's dictating our LH and FSH, which are also going to dictate when the egg is being released. So this half is called our follicular cycle. Once we've released an egg and this hormone, progesterone, starts to rise, that's when things start to shift a little bit for women. You may notice in these 2 weeks, you feel a little bit different. You're gonna feel a bit more inward. You want to do different activity. Maybe in the first half, you can do those HIIT workouts. And the second half, now you're wanting to do yoga and more meditation or go for a walk. Things slow down just a little bit. Your appetite goes up. Maybe you want healthier carbs in that time. Your ability to be out in the world changes a little bit because you want to reflect more. Reason being, once the egg is released, it's waiting to be fertilized. It's waiting to create this environment of nurturing because progesterone is all about nurturing. It's the warm hug hormone that I like to call. So this hormone is anti-anxiety, it's antidepressive. It's really there to help us feel grounded and nurtured and really secure within ourselves because that's how it wants the egg to feel if it gets fertilized. It wants to create this cushion where it can thrive in. So you're not necessarily going to feel like you have really high libido. You will in the first half because that's the purpose of it, but the second half doesn't have purpose in high libido. So this can be interesting for a lot of women because then they start to feel like there's something wrong with them. But really what's happening is that your rhythm is just changing. There's nothing wrong with you. That is what nature is meant to do because this half of the cycle is all about containing energy. Whereas this half of the cycle, the first half, is all about moving energy around. So it's a very, very different experience. So some of the things that will affect this rhythm. Now, if you're on birth control, it's going to be a very different thing. If you have an IUD, very different thing, right? You're going to experience something very different, so that'll be a different video. If you are perimenopausal, you're going to have some of this, but it's going to be shifting because now estrone, which is another type of estrogen, is trying to move up and take estradiol's place. And while it's doing that, it's creating this period of time in our lifetime where we're going to see a lot of estrogen dominance. Essentially meaning estrogen is taking over, progesterone is low. Now, if we're moving into this period of perimenopause, menopause, with low progesterone due to high stress in our life, due to toxicity in our environment, like our products and pesticides and whatnot, just due to life itself. And if progesterone is already low, that is where you're going to start to experience those hot flashes, those night sweats, the headaches, the insomnia, the irritability, just, this change where you just don't feel like yourself anymore because that transition period is almost demanding more of you, more of your progesterone, but if the stores aren't there, it's really challenging for your body to adapt, to be flexible, to change as it's moving through this perimenopause period. Now, if you're menopausal and if you've already moved through that, you still may notice some sort of a rhythm throughout the month where things change a little bit. Maybe your energy is a little bit different. Maybe your outlook on life is a little bit different. So what I would encourage you to do is start noticing that. Do you change from new moon to full moon? Like, what does that life look like? And then full moon to new moon again, what does that look like? Is your appetite changing? Are your cravings changing? How you walk through life, is that changing? Is your libido changing? So really what I'm encouraging of all of you women to do is just to start noticing. Start noticing any changes throughout your cycle, whether you're menstruating or not, and just noticing things that will influence it. Like, how am I allowing life to influence my internal environment? Because remember, hormones are an effect, not a cause. So depending on our environment, the food choices we make, the toxins that are around us, the stresses that we have, they will dictate the messages that these hormones will give our cells. So when you can start creating daily habits to help support this, one of them being stress reduction. So whether that is through exercise, through meditation, through yoga, depending on where you're on your cycle, what type of exercise you do is important. That in itself will start to create an environment where the hormones can exhale. They can just relax. The other thing is looking at your food. Are you eating organic? Because those pesticides that are sprayed on the food will mimic this estrogen, throwing this flow off. The other thing is looking at your immediate environment, like your home. Is there mold? Am I putting products on my body that will disturb my hormones? Some of these daily habits that we have, just start noticing, start writing them down, start looking at ingredients to see if there's hormone disruptors in them. Because that can be your first step into creating better habits around your hormones and better flow throughout the month. So these are just some tips that you can start with, and my hope is that with this video you're going to start creating more awareness around your hormones and what your unique hormone imprint is, so that you can from there start looking for tools that are going to support you not only in this part of your life when you're menstruating, but also during perimenopause, menopause, and even when you're moving through fertility and